We're streaming on Facebook, which also gives a very good audience. A couple hundred will join there.
Go on, Tomika-san, we're live.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the monthly Interreligious Association for Peace and Development Peace Program. The title of today's forum is Toward the Unification of the Korean Peninsula, the Role of Faith and Civic Leadership. I am Tomiko Dagan, Senior Vice President of the Universal Peace Federation, USA, and IAPD Peace Forum Program Director. The Interreligious Association for Peace and Development is a project of the Universal Peace Federation, which is an NGO in general consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the UN. The 70-year division of the Korean Peninsula has caused the unknown suffering of many people. As far back as the late 1970s, I was involved with a project supporting the repatriation of Japanese wives and children who followed their husbands and fathers and emigrated to North Korea. These families were deceived by false propaganda and promises in the 60s about the life in North Korea, and then found themselves unable to revisit Japan, even if it were only to see aging parents and relatives before they died. I read the government censored and redacted letters from these captive Japanese pleading for release. My colleagues and I fasted and demonstrated in the front of the United Nations building in New York to publicize the circumstances of their lives and the false claims of the North Korean government about them. Our speaker today are uniquely informed about the life in North Korea. Now I'd like to invite the moderator of today's program, Dr. Michael Jenkins, the president of UPF International and the chairman of UPF USA. Welcome, Dr. Jenkins. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Vice President Duggan, and to our listening audience. We welcome you to this special program on the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula and the role of faith leaders. We are very happy to bring to you this program every week on Tuesday at 2 p.m. We focus sometimes with members of Congress, sometimes with academicians, sometimes with business people. Today, we're leaning more towards understanding from faith leaders and people who are also working in the nonprofit area to really help the people of North Korea come to freedom and how we can actually resolve the conflict between North and South Korea. Our first speaker of three speakers today will be Archbishop George Augustus Stallings, Jr. He's the founder of the Imani Temple Catholic African-American Catholic Congregation in Washington, D.C. Archbishop Stallings was ordained as a Catholic priest after he attended St. Pius X Seminary in Kentucky. And he was sent by his bishop to the Pontifical North American College in Rome, overseen by the Holy Father and the Vatican. And he also got 3 degrees from the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas between 1970 and 1975. He got the Bachelor of Sacred Theology, a master's degree in pastoral theology, and a licentiate of sacred theology. Bishop Stallings was ordained and then became the pastor of Our Lady of Peace Church in Washington, D.C. Later, he became the pastor of St. Teresa of Avila Parish in Washington. And he is also noted to be the youngest priest in American history up to that time as a full pastor of the church. He went on to form an independent ministry, which has flourished, and he's been noted as a leader of the American Clergy Leadership Conference, which he helped to develop over the years as a former co-chairman of that organization. He also is now the chairman of the Interreligious Association for Peace and Development for all of North America. And we're very honored to welcome him here at this time, Archbishop George Augustus Stallings, Jr. Please share with us your experiences and thoughts on bringing peace in the Korean Peninsula. Welcome.
Archbishop, will you please unmute?
Oh, I was just talking away. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for having me here on this platform. My deepest thanks and appreciation to you and to the Vice President of the Universal Peace Federation, USA, Mrs. Tomiko Duggan, to all our distinguished panelists who are gathered here today. We are very much a part of that global network of citizens who are not only concerned about our own national politics or national issues, but also very much concerned about what is happening around the globe. I'm reminded of the words of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. What affects one person directly affects all of us indirectly. And that is why I have engaged with the Universal Peace Federation for the past 20 years as a faith leader, as a man who deeply believes in the spirituality of the commonality of all men and women, all 7.7 billion people upon the earth, as inextricably linked together spiritually into a common universal family, brothers and sisters one to another. And so what happens on the Korean Peninsula affects, what happens on the Korean Peninsula directly affects each one of us who are not Korean or living in that region indirectly. As a member of the American Clergy Leadership Conference for the past 20 years, I have had the blessed fortune of being associated with the spiritual leaders in the world who have been focused on the reunification of the Korean Peninsula, North and South Korea, all of their lives. The Reverend Dr. Sum Young Moon and his beloved wife, Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon. And while Father Moon is in the spirit world, his beloved wife, Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon, the mother of peace, continues to press forward for the reunification of North and South Korea. As a member of the American Clergy Leadership Conference, I've had an opportunity over the past 20 years to visit the Korean Peninsula perhaps 4 or 5 times a year. So multiply that by 20 and you get over 100 times I have been. I never thought that I, as a Black boy born in the South in North Carolina and coming to Washington, D.C. and becoming a Roman Catholic priest and eventually an independent priest and bishop and archbishop and patriarch, that I've ever had the opportunity to go to such a beautiful place called the land of the morning calm. That's the irony of it all, that we call Korea the land of the morning calm, and yet we see that there is anything but calmness when it comes to the burning desire in the hearts of all Koreans to see the reunification of that Korean Peninsula, particularly since they are of one culture and they are constantly in communication in some instances with one another, with family members, some in the North, some in the South. And as a member of ACLC, one of the events that took place each time we visited was to go to the 38th parallel, to look at that human-made division between the people of the North and the people of the South. And as a faith leader, my heart resonated with all of the people. I do not point fingers. I'm not trying to cast blame. Even if we look at the Korean War and what happened with the division of the peninsula after that war and who's at fault, that's not the issue. That doesn't concern me. What is really concerning me is that we are dealing with people. We are dealing with families. You know, we talk about the pandemic, the number of persons. Let's just talk about the United States of America. Over 500,000 500,000 people have died. That's 500,000 people have died as a result of contracting COVID-19, also known as the novel coronavirus pandemic. And what you constantly hear on the news is not just the shocking reality of 500,000 plus having died, but that each one of those 500,000 plus persons has a name attached to it. And it's the same thing in the Korean Peninsula. Each one of those citizens in North and South Korea, when we see that division, they all have names that intersect across that 38th parallel. They all are one people, one culture, one race. And to see the division there, it's so painful. And so I ask myself, every time I've gone, I've asked myself, what role do I play as a man of God, as a faith leader? You know, as an American, as an African American, I think of all of these things, Dr. Scholte, I think of all of these things that would limit my involvement, my participation, or my concern about it. But the reality, my spiritual connectivity with God, our creator, our heavenly parent, along with that God and creator being the heavenly parent of all humankind, my heart goes out. And as a man of faith, I know that the only source of assistance that I can provide is what we call soft diplomacy. Every time we, as the American Clergy Leadership Conference, went to South Korea rather, and went to that 38th parallel and looked over that barrier into North Korea, we realized that we were engaging in soft diplomacy. So I said, how can I, using soft diplomacy, work towards the reunification of the Korean Peninsula, North and South Korea? And what obviously that I felt deeply impressed about in seeing that situation and being moved, my heart being moved to wanting to do something, I said, what must we as American clergy leadership do to keep the issue of the reunification of the Korean Peninsula, namely North and South Korea, on the front burner? We use that expression, keeping it on the front burner. And so I said, what I can do and what we as ACLC can do is to constantly raise the issue of reunification of the Korean Peninsula. What we can do as faith and spiritual leaders is to bring it to our congregations, to make it an issue that is on the front burner by making it known, by making it relevant, by making it important, that is one of the last bastions in the hemisphere, in the world, that seeks reunification. We look at North and South Korea, and we look at the Middle East, that these are two areas that are crying out for a sense of harmony and oneness. And so I believe that the role of the faith leader is to engage in prayer, because prayer not only changes things, but prayer can change people so that people can change things. And that our responsibility is through prayer to keep the issue of reunification on the front burner, so it's not pushed to the back, so that it is not lost, because a lot of Americans have no conscious presence when it comes to about the division in North and South Korea. And I would wholeheartedly admit, I would confess, if I were not involved with the American Clergy Leadership Conference, if I didn't know the Reverend Dr. Moon and his wife, Dr. Kihun Moon, I wouldn't have that sensitivity. But God brought me to that continent for a purpose, to that country, to that peninsula for a purpose, is so that I could use my influence, to use my voice to keep it in perspective, to keep it on the front burner. The last thing I want to say, that as a man of faith, I believe that all things are possible. I believe that with God, all things are possible. And some may think that there'll never be the reunification when they look at Kim Jong-un in North Korea and what went on these past few years when President Trump was trying to engage him in a dialogue to bring him closer to agreement in the need for reunification and for creating a world of true and lasting peace. You may think that is impossible, but prayer can break the yoke. I've seen how Father Moon and Mother Moon have broken the heart of the leadership in North Korea in a way that not even hard diplomacy, not military, not politics, has been able to enter into. So I know already that the door is open. I know that because of the work of the Universal Peace Federation and organizations, affiliate organizations are making this thing happen. It can happen. So I want to close out with these words. There's a gospel singer, Dr. Schulte. I'm going to have you listen to this famous doctor singer, this famous gospel singer. Her name is Vanessa Bell Armstrong, and she sings a song entitled "Faith Can Conquer Anything." And this is the faith that I hold in my heart. This is the faith that the clergy of the American Clergy Leadership Conference hold in their hearts. This is what the Universal Peace Federation holds in its hearts, as we realize that prayer can not only change things, but prayer can change people so that people can change things. Here are the lyrics to that song. Faith, I have faith that sees the invisible, expects the incredible, that expects the inevitable, that receives the impossible. I have faith that can conquer anything. Faith that uproots my problems. Faith to know God can solve them. Faith to vision my future. I have faith that can conquer anything. Faith to reach the unreachable. Faith to fight the unbeatable. Faith to remove the unmovable. Faith that stands the invincible. Yes, I have faith that can conquer anything. And ultimately, we will conquer the division between North and South Korea. We will see the reunification of that Korean Peninsula. My prayer is that God will give all of us a long life so that we together can join hands in hands, cross over the 38th parallel, and embrace our brothers and sisters, both from the other side. Let that be our prayer as we continue our struggle, our role in bringing about the reunification of the Korean Peninsula, North and South Korea, the land of the morning call. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Archbishop.
Amen.
Thank you for a beautiful presentation, and we feel hope as you speak. Our next speaker today is Dr. Kihun Kim. He's currently the chairman of the Promotional Committee for the World Christian Leadership Conference, which is a global Christian organization of pastors and leaders. And he is also the vice president of the Family Federation International. He's dedicated his life to serving God. He moved to from Korea to Chicago in 1977. So he's an American, but with a Korean root. He is also a person that founded the True Family Values Banquet, which has run every year since 1995, and has been an amazing bringing together of all the denominations and all people, unity of the body of Christ. 1,000 leaders gather every year. And he also received a special award from President Obama for outstanding community work in Chicago. This award propelled him onward in his pursuit to help others. And he also received the Chicago SIGHA World Service Award from former Illinois Congressman Danny Davis in 2008. During his years in America, Dr. Kim has gained extensive experience ministering to churches and pastors and helping them gain victory in their work to serve humanity. He also worked on the college campuses throughout this nation. Between 2007 and 2013, he was the national chairman of the American Clergy Leadership Conference, a coalition of faith leaders with over 20,000 clergy in the United States. He's continued to really work on marriage and family and helping churches really strengthen family. He also instilled great hope for all of us in America as we work together for the Family Federation. When he became chairman in 2013, and then 2020 in October, he became the chair of the World Christian Leadership Conference. Let's welcome Dr. Kihun Kim.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for introduction. And thank you, Archbishop Stallings, and your message brought to me incredible big hope for the sake of unification of North and South Korea. This afternoon, I'd like to mention just a few things. And what blocking reunification North and South Korea. There are two things matters which blocking complication of reunification of Korean Peninsula. The first matter is very extremely different ideologies between North and South Korea. We all know communism and democracy. It causes two nations incredible, wide, and deep and big divisions. As we all know, that Kim Il-sung reformed Marxism, centering on him Juche ideology. And these two different ideologies really breaking our unity spirit between two nations, North and South Korea. More than 10 million people escaped to South from North Korea between 1945 and until Korean War broke out in 1950. So my family is one of them. You know, we try to escape big family, my family from North Korea, and why they are moving toward South Korea, we're missing most of them. So this is our situation today. But they both, Juche ideology and democracy, could not offer a happy life to the people of Korean Peninsula. This was the reasons when co-founders Father Mother Moon visited Pyongyang, they introduced to Kim Il-sung Godism. God first. Your ideology, Juche ideology, and democracy cannot bring great hope rebuilding our country and bring happier life to the people of Korean Peninsula. The second matter is a big division in South. Not only conflict, North versus South. Another big matter is against one another in South. This is another big blocking, bringing reunification of South and North Korea. Not only religious leaders and social leaders and political leaders, very, very surprising, even religious leaders publicly saying we must drop the bomb in Pyongyang. So this is the situation South Korean society today. We are fighting not only against North and South, we are against each other, South to South. So what we need a new vision, new ideology is necessary. Like UPF vision of core principle of peace, uplifting the spirit of promoting of interdependence, mutual prospect, and universally shared values. So without the new vision, new ideology, very hard to bring reunification North and South Korea. as religious leaders and as religious people, we must practice God-centered love. True love should be preceded anything else for the sake of reunification of Korean Peninsula. For good example, Pope Francis just visited Iraq the first time in 2000 history to meet top Muslim leaders and organized inter-religious leaders meeting as well. It is a great example practicing of God's love.
Mm.
He concluded, let us together forgive and rebuild. So without we practice forgive, we cannot come together and rebuild our faith, community, and our nation and our world. Pope reminded me about Father Mother Moon's thought. To bring unity, we must first practice forgiving and loving one another. It also reminded me when Mother Moon visited many Muslim countries in Africa, she blessed them, centering on God's love. She called them, you are my family. So as faith and religious leaders, we must practice God-centered love. This should be our ongoing try to bring reunification of North and South Korea. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. That was just excellent. And we pray for your family, who most of your relatives are still in North Korea, where your family's from.
Thank you.
And we thank you for your heart and passion to bring religious leaders together worldwide to call on the conscience of all people to bring this suffering situation in North Korea to an end. At this time, I'm very honored to present two videos for you today. Dr. Schulte will speak after that, and I will introduce her. The first video is going to be by Sung-Ju Lee. It's called Every Falling Star. And the second video will be by Grace Joe. Again, these are defectors that have come to freedom, and they're giving their testimony. Go ahead. Our technical team can run the
Hello,
video.
my name is Sung-Ju. I'm very delighted to introduce my book to you. Every Falling Star is a story about how I survived as a street boy in North Korea and how I escaped from it. I came from an elite Pyongyang family and had everything, including top taekwondo classes, schooling, loving parents. My dream was to be a general in the army, and I was well on my way. Then at age 11, my family, for reasons that in the West would be seen as being responsible citizens in a democracy, were excommunicated by the regime. We were sent to the north. Starving, my father went out in search of food. He never came back. My mother disappeared a few months after that. I lost everything, family, dream, education, when I was 12 years old. I had to survive without parents on the street rather than home. In order to survive, I formed a gang with the 7 boys, who became my brothers. I transferred my taekwondo skills to street fighting. I started to use opium, I drank, I smoked, I pickpocketed rather than studying at school. I lived for 4 years with my brothers, and I buried 2 brothers during this time. But I hadn't lost everything. I had a hope that I wouldn't meet my parents again. With this hope, I had made a wish whenever I saw a falling star. And sure enough, unknown to me, every Sunday for 4 years, my maternal grandfather was searching for me. He was studying the face of every street boy until he found me. At first, I didn't recognize him. My years on the street had hardened me. I didn't even remember my birth name Sangju, but my street name Spear. I went to old man's house to steal from him. Then I saw my parents' wedding photo. My story chronicles my life as a street boy, and my aim is to inspire others that they can survive the greatest of adversaries. My story is about friendship, love, and hope in terrible circumstances. Hope is never lost. No one can take that away. Only you can give it. I refuse to ever give hope to anyone. Thank you so much.
And I am an American. Thank you. It is my privilege to be an American. When freedom is absent in my life, it was dark, sad, desperate, and I was fearful. My grandmother, when she raised me until I was 7 years old, and she passed away because she starved and she didn't have any food to eat. Her last words was to ask us to leave the village and survive. Also, her last wish was to eat a baked potato. I was so little, I was not able to provide what she wished for. But grace of God, I survived, I came to America, and I found freedom. My father, who was a hero to me, he tried his best to find a way to help us to live in North Korea. However, the regime ruthlessly killed my father. Only his crime was to cross the border between China and North Korea. And his only crime was to bring a bag of rice for his dying children. He was handcuffed on a train. He was not able to sit or stand completely. He starved for many days and severely tortured. My youngest brother, Gukbum, he died because of starvation. We didn't have enough skin powder to make his porridge. He decided to leave us first, maybe because he realized that the regime, the country, is not worth for him to leave. When I grew up in China, I was able to eat white rice and pork, and sometimes I can eat meat. The life in China was difficult, but it was way better than life in North Korea. However, I had to hide and run to place every time in China. However, we try very hard, and how much we careful we are in China, we still got caught many times by Chinese police and forcefully sent back to North Korea. Each time we sent back to North Korea, I had unforgettable memories that keep reminds me that freedom is a treasure. I now know the blessings of liberty in the United States. I am a happy college student, which is almost the dream life. I always dreamed to go to university and study all I wanted. Now I became a college student, and I'm very honored and very happy to share this news. I also work at a private dental office and support my family. Also, I travel place to raise my voice for my people. All this life, I cannot imagine if I lived in North Korea or in China. So I feel very blessed again, and I'm very happy to be an American. Thank you. American leadership to advance the freedom in the world is essential because keeping people alive in the world is the most important and valuable thing in this world, I believe. Because when people try to help other people, it's very difficult, and they also face challenges and difficulties. When I meet them, I always tell them this: keeping a person alive is 10 times harder than you killing a person. So you are doing a good job, and keep going. Working together, Americans have the ability to change the world. Thank you.
Wow, that was so moving. Those videos were just so outstanding for us to learn and understand. With the Washington Times fact finders that Dr. Kim and I were able to participate in, along with the UPF, we met many defectors. And we're going to present to you now somebody who's really considered one of the world's leading activists in North Korean human rights and helping hundreds and hundreds of defectors find freedom. She spent 2 decades promoting freedom and dignity of the North Korean people, and currently is the president of the Defense Forum Foundation. She began a program to host the first North Korean defectors in the United States, giving them a voice to speak out about the atrocities being committed against the people of North Korea. Currently, Dr. Scholte also serves as the chairman of the North Korean Freedom Coalition, and she's the vice co-chair of the Committee on Human Rights for North Korea and the honorary chairman of Free North Korea Radio. I would like to just touch on some of the awards that she has received. She's a very regular speaker and giving briefings on Capitol Hill at the Foreign Affairs Committee in '99 and 2011, 2017, 2005, 6, 7, 8, and also 18 and 19, giving briefings on the current situation with the North Korean regime. She's a person of faith, and she's a person that cares about the people. She also received the Seoul Peace Prize, and she received the Sanders Peace and Social Justice Award, as well as the Walter Judd Freedom Award. She received the Medal of Order of Diplomatic Service, the highest award the Korean government gives to a non-Korean. She received the Outstanding Washingtonian Award just in 2020 from the Potomac Korean Forum. And she received the Gold Service Volunteer Award from President of the United States. She is an honorary citizen of Seoul and a great woman for peace, freedom for all people. I'd like to present Dr. Suzanne K Schulte at this time. Thank you, Suzanne. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. This is a great honor for me, and I've just been so moved by the opening speakers, and I think I'm going to answer Archbishop Stallings' hope and Dr. Kim, some of the observations he made with the presentation I want to give. But thank you so much for this honor. Tomiko told me to focus on the current situation and then what can be done. So I'm going to do a quick rundown on what the current situation is facing the people of North Korea. And then I'm going to give you some very practical ways that you can help in taking action on this issue. I want to start out by just remembering that John 8, verse 32, then you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. And I'll explain what I mean by that as I talk about this. But to start out, we now have over 33,000 North Koreans that have escaped since the outbreak of the COVID. They're actually in South Korea. There's thousands and thousands of more that are in other countries like Canada, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, like the young woman, Grace Joe, that you just heard from. Because of all these people escaping, there is now no doubt that the regime, the Kim Jong-un regime, is committing gross violations of human rights, atrocities that have no parallel in history. And it's important to start by saying that because as Dr. Jenkins pointed out, I first hosted the first North Korean defectors that ever testified in the United States. And I can tell you, this was in the 1990s. People didn't believe them. Their stories were so horrible. But now that there's this huge body of evidence because of the bravery of the defectors escaping, like the ones you just heard from, there is no dispute that this regime is committing horrific violations of human rights. And the United Nations Commission of Inquiry concluded that in February 2014. So what's happening today is we have a situation because of COVID. The North Koreans, I believe, had the first outbreak of COVID outside of China. They were the ones that shut their border down first. They shut their border down January 22nd, 2020. Now, according to the World Health Organization, there have been 0 deaths and there have been 0 cases in North Korea. But we know that that's a lie because they share that border, and there's always been a lot of cross-border traffic between China and North Korea. That's how the refugees got out, is escaping through China. But what we see, and we know for sure, we don't know how many cases there have. We don't know how many deaths there have been from COVID. But what we do know this: there is great fear. There is great fear in North Korea of COVID. We saw that on display for all the world to see by the brutal killing of a South Korean maritime official last fall. We do not know why this man was approaching the North Korean maritime border. We don't know why. Was he defecting to North Korea? Some have said, his family says absolutely not. Did he fall overboard? We don't know what he was doing, but we do know this: the North Koreans killed him and burned his body. That's how terrified they are of COVID. And they have a shoot to kill order at the border. So I believe that they probably have had some severe outbreaks of COVID in other parts of the country, but not in Pyongyang. I think they've been able to keep it out of Pyongyang because we saw that they had their 8th Party Congress meet last month and nobody was wearing any masks. So we have to conclude that they've probably been good at keeping the elites safe. And this is really important to note, because everything this regime does is for the survival of Kim Jong-un. They do not care about their people at all. And I would say, Dr. Kim mentioned Juche. I would say Juche is actually not an ideology. I would say it is a religion, because Kim Jong-un is their God, and they are brainwashed to worship him from birth. This is a horrific perversion of the Holy Trinity in North Korea and how they established their dictatorship. So what's happening today with refugees? Only 229 escaped in 2021, as opposed to the over thousands that had come each year since, since Artist March, for the last couple of decades. So there's only 229 that got out. Now, that's because of the closing of the border and the COVID. But what's happening right now, I believe, is that something that you all can really help with. This is an historic opportunity right now because North Korea is refusing to accept back the people that have escaped, that are being detained in detention centers in China right now. And most of those people in those detention centers are people who had the resources to get out because it's so dangerous to cross the border. So that means they're only in 2 categories. They're either elites, Korean Worker Party's member, elites high up, people that have escaped, or they have family members in South Korea that raise the money to get their loved ones out of North Korea. So that puts them in immediate danger, because what has been happening with the North Koreans escaping is they have to go through China. When they're forced back to North Korea, they are tortured, 100% tortured, 100% imprisoned, in some cases executed, because it's a crime in North Korea to leave the country without permission. So those, and if you find out you were trying to get to South Korea, that's a crime punishable by death. If you find out you were in contact with a Christian missionary, who are the people that are involved in helping people escape, that's punishable by death. So the people in detention center right now are in grave danger, but since North Korea won't accept any refugees back because they're terrified of COVID, this is a tremendous opportunity for the government of South Korea to quietly work with China to safely safely resettle those North Koreans that are in detention right now. We don't know how many there are. It could be a couple hundred, it could be closer to 1,000, but we do know they're in grave danger. But this is something that we're calling on doing. We did a letter that was signed by representatives of every single presidential administration since Jimmy Carter to President Moon, calling on him to work with China to get these refugees out. That's the #1 priority. The other thing I want to mention is regarding South Korea, and Dr. Kim really struck home on this one. He talked about the division in South Korea. We have a situation right now that is extremely disturbing because the person in the world, the one person in the world that should be speaking out the strongest, morally and constitutionally, on behalf of the Korean people, whether they're born north of the DMZ or south of the DMZ, the person who constitutionally, morally should be speaking out for the human rights of the Korean people is Moon Jae-in. And Moon Jae-in instead is speaking out and working on behalf of the Kim dictatorship by the actions that he has been taken. And one thing I want to underscore that happened just recently is Moon has his party has pushed through the Assembly of South Korea legislation that bans leafleting, balloon launches, getting information into North Korea. And this was something that the dictatorship, the Kim dictatorship, requested that South Korea stop getting information into North Korea. And Kim Jong-un's sister demanded that the balloon launches stopped, the rice bottle launches stopped. And this is what the South Korean parliament did. They passed a law banning those activities. We should be doing the opposite. But that's what's going on in South Korea. There's a terrible division there in how to deal with North Korea. Well, I will tell you, the truth will set them free. And here's what we should be doing in response to what's going on in North Korea. We should be doing everything we can to get information in. And I just wanted to show you, this is an example of one of the techniques the defectors came up with to get information in North Korea. This is a rice bottle from a rice bottle launch. It's filled with rice. It's an empty water bottle filled with rice. You can see there's a US $1 bill in there. There's a USB card in here. There's medicine for parasites in here. There's a Bible. This is something that the defectors would hurl into the water. These would float up on North Hwanghae province. That's just one thing that they were doing, but they were also using balloons, and this became very controversial. But in the balloons, they were setting in PPE masks, also flash drives of information, leaflets explaining the reality of life in South Korea, and all that activity has been banned by the current government in South Korea. Everything that the North Koreans should be demanding, we should be doing more of, and we should be getting more information in. So I just want to tell you some practical ways that people can help. First of all, Free North Korea Radio. We have a program that broadcasts every morning and every evening. It's a partnership between North Korean escapees and American churches, Korean Americans and Korean American churches who pay for the transmission. And we broadcast information, true information. We have a 30-minute news program and a 30-minute gospel program, but we're getting information in there and very powerful ways to explain to the people of North Korea that we really care about them. So one of the most powerful things we can do is to get information into North Korea so they know how much we care about them. The fact that we're even having this meeting to talk about our concerns for the people of North Korea, this is the kind of thing that people in North Korea need to hear about, because the regime raises them to hate Americans, to think that we're their enemy. And as Dr. Kim said, they think Americans want to blow them up. They think Americans want to destroy them, when nothing could be further from the truth. But that's how the regime lies to its own people. So information is very important. So to just summarize real quickly, what can be done right now? Number one is prayer. And Archbishop Stallings mentioned this, but the power of prayer, I absolutely believe in that, because this is a spiritual battle, because these people are living in a great darkness and this is a demonic regime that hates God and considers Christians their greatest enemy, because he set himself up as a God. So number one, praying against that. The second thing is appealing with us for the Moon administration to help rescue the refugees out of China, calling on South Korea to do their part, pressuring China to allow them to be able to leave. This is something everyone can be involved in. Another thing is to pressure the Moon government to bring this up. The Moon government should be at the forefront of advocating for the human rights of the North Korean people. They shouldn't be trying to shut down the voices of the defectors. And that is what they are doing. They have taken away all the support of the North Korean defectors that they used to enjoy under the previous administrations. It's never been this awful for the North Korean defectors. It's so bad for the North Korean defectors in South Korea that I actually heard a defector say, he's the head of the defector organizations. His name is Hua Kwan-il. He actually said to me last week, or the end of February, I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, he said, the situation facing North Koreans is worse in South Korea these days than it is in North Korea. That's how terrible the government of South Korea has been to the people of North Korea. No, and as I mentioned before, no one on earth is more responsible than Moon to stand up for them, but he's not. He's standing up for the dictatorship instead. So another way, that practical way you can help is raising this and pressuring the Moon administration to help the North Koreans and to stand up for them rather than trying to crush them. Another practical way you can help is just to join it with an organization. Find one of the North Korean defector groups that if you're passionate about getting information in, for example, if you're there's organizations that are doing this work. If you're passionate about rescuing women, trafficked women and orphans, there's a group that's member of our North Korea Freedom Coalition that's all focused on helping protect orphans and rescuing trafficked women. If you want to get information in, I would invite every one of you on this call today to consider getting involved with Free North Korea Radio. A couple of programs that we do right now, we just finished up broadcasting messages from Democrat and Republican members of Congress into North Korea for the Solel New Year in February, basically telling them, we care about you. We're worried about you. We care about you. We don't have a problem with North Korea at all. We have a problem with Kim Jong-un, not with you. And this is a very powerful program we do. But we also have something where we call it Free North Korea Radio brings you your friends of the world. And we will interview people from different countries to talk about their country and about how they know about North Korea. Because North Koreans are so shut off from the rest of the world, this opens their minds to other countries. And for example, we interviewed Justice Michael Kirby from Australia about Australia and about why did he get involved in becoming a judge and what was his life like in Australia and how does he know about North Korea? And he answers all those questions and talks about Australia and what Australia is like, and then explains, I was the head of the UN Commission of Inquiry, and I met hundreds of North Koreans, and they're amazing people and their stories, and I just care so much about them. So that's a really powerful program that we have, another practical way that you can get involved. And I wanted to say something that Archbishop Stallings said really struck me about, he was reading that song. I have to tell you, we have a program, we have the song of the month. We're actually going to change it to the song of the week, but we're actually broadcasting powerful music into North Korea as part of Free North Korea Radio. The defectors have taken the propaganda music of the regime glorifying Kim Jong-un, and they've changed the words to glorify God. But in addition to that, we have a song that we suggest songs that they play. And one of the songs that we did in November was the song Waymaker, which became a big hit during the pandemic. It was written by a Nigerian woman. It's a very powerful song, and we sent that to broadcast in North Korea. And the Free North Korea Radio staff loved that song so much. They broadcast it every day. And then for December, because of Christmas, we broadcast Oh Holy Night. But I think that music is really powerful, especially music that glorifies God, because I know this from somebody on my prayer team, a gentleman by the name of Harry Valentine. He told me during our most recent prayer call that you can break the yoke of oppression off of people by glorifying God and singing and praising God. And so we're going to start a program on Free North Korea just to do that with music, teaching songs to the people of North Korea to break that yoke off. But in conclusion, I just want to say that it is through the people of North Korea that we can bring about peaceful regime change. I absolutely believe in that. If you're a member of the elite and you're running that country, you wake up every morning, you only have two choices: devotion to Kim Jong-un or seeing your family killed in front of you and yourself murdered or sent to a slow death in a political prison camp. That's all they see. We have to give them hope. We have to say to them, there is a way forward. Peaceful unification can come, and we want to work with you, because we know that living under Kim Jong-un is a horrific way to live your life. And we know that there are people in the regime that have that view because they're escaping, and they're escaping all the time, or they're getting executed. We know that there's people in the regime that absolutely wanted to lead North Korea another way forward. And they have nobody to partner with, especially when the president of South Korea is turning his back on the North Korean people. So with that, I will conclude. Thank you so much. It's been great to have this chance.
Thank you, Suzanne. Excellent presentation. We are just overwhelmed with the clarity and also the urgency of helping our brothers and sisters in North Korea. So we have our panelists back. We have a couple questions that have come from our audience to Mrs. Schulte, Dr. Schulte. Are North Korean refugees integrating well in South Korea? Are they well perceived by the South Koreans?
No, it's very hard for them. There's a really strong prejudice against the North Koreans. And I think the South Korea has a wonderful program called Hanawan, where they go for several months, but they have to learn just practical things like how to shop, how to use an ATM, how to use the subway. The country is so behind. North Korea is so far behind. But it's very difficult for them. But when they get the support they need, they can thrive in South Korea. But there is a prejudice there. But I want to give you one example. There's an after-school program that was created by the North Korean defectors. When the North Korean children get special attention, they can catch up with their South Korean peers within 6 to 9 months. But they need that special attention. So it's very difficult, but it can be done as long as they get the support they need.
We have our panelists here, and we'd like to open the floor with the following questions. How can we best influence the South Korean government to open up and focus on the human rights issues, or even this critically important part of giving information to the North? We heard from Bill Gertz of the Washington Times and other experts that information is probably the most important thing. Somebody gets a USB drive from these balloons and it has a Korean drama on it. Nothing anti-political or anything. It's just a beautiful Korean drama. And people's lives change because they realize they've been told the South is miserable. It's a political jail, like a regime. And then they see people enjoying their families with the same Korean customs, by the way. And that really makes them want to get back with their family. So Dr. Kim, Bishop Stallings, or Suzanne, please feel free to comment that. How can we influence the President Moon and the current government?
Well, I think raising attention on this issue, I know that for a fact that when we have, for example, if your faith leaders appealed to him, that would have an impact, because I think it's people don't understand that this is happening. When I say to people, South Korea's republic is in jeopardy, they can't believe it. They cannot believe it. They can't understand it, but this is what's happening. So I think just raising the profile to him of your concerns about what's happening is very doable and also has an impact.
Thank you. Dr. Kim, how can we affect the South Koreans?
Yes, I really support Dr. Schulte's presentation. Now, many defectors came to South Korea. They cannot adjust the life of South Korean. I think if you ask, you are really satisfied. You escape from North Korea to South Korea. I believe over 90%, they are not satisfied about their life in South Korea. How we can impact this Moon government? Yes, he got the majority vote last the presidential elections and also general elections. His party got the majority, and they can do anything legally and everything under his regime. They can do anything what they want. So we have election day this coming month, and next year another presidential election. So democracy So we have to express our opinions, suggestions. We must stand up about this one of option is voting power, change regime, our voting power. Otherwise, political figures, political leaders, they are not really cooperating with people's voice. They're looking for their own political benefit. So I think most crucial, important is voting power to change South Korea.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. 2017, we were on the brink of war. Kim Jong-un, the chairman of North Korea, was saying that he had nuclear weapons and missiles capable of delivering them to Los Angeles. President Trump was saying, we're going to hit them with fire and fury like the world has never seen. At that time, 80,000 people were organized by Mother Moon in the in the World Cup Stadium. And 400 religious leaders from every country around the world got together there and prayed. And, was just a short time later that the Olympics came up and dialogue opened. So what do you think, Archbishop, about you were there at that rally, and what is the power of prayer? What can religious leaders do practically as well as in prayer?
Well, I think on this platform, we have discussed about the power of prayer, reiterated by Dr. Scholte and her firm belief. Now, here's a woman who is in the academy, who's working from the vantage point of a layperson, and she in her own personal experience understands the power of prayer. And I think that what we are facing here in South Korea, and perhaps Dr. Kihun Kim can shed some light on this, and Dr. Scholte as well. I wonder if there's a growing sense of complacency in South Korea as a result of this division that has taken place for over 60 years between the now two countries on the same peninsula, or is there a shell shock attitude or mindset that says that we don't believe that Kim Jong-un, and going back to his father and his grandfather, when you look at the three of them, and I remember when Father Moon dealt with the grandfather of Kim Jong-un, and there was a breakthrough there. That's why I said I've seen some breakthroughs happening with Reverend Moon and his wife, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, in communicating with the North in a way that we have not seen happening politically. And I thank Dr. Scholte for shedding some light on President Moon's role in what's going on in North Korea. I never had access, had done that kind of assessment, which now causes me to go back and do some research and do some reflection there, because we cannot aid and abet a situation that is not going to be for the betterment of the entire peninsula. But I think that prayer, for me, as I said, soft diplomacy is about prayer. In many ways, I wish I was a politician in a major position of influence that could do something on that level. I don't want to be a military leader, that's for sure, because the last thing I would want to see is a military conflict. But I just wish I were in a position, a political position to put some leverage. But as Dr. Scholte will tell me, I know she will say this, we can exert even more. So we can exert a level of influence in the United States on members of our Congress, that we all have congressional representatives. I happen to be living in the District of Columbia, Dr. Scholte, where we have taxation without representation, but that's another issue. But I believe that we can appeal to our politicians to raise this subject of the need for reunification of the Korean Peninsula, because whenever we've made overtures to Congress, they've always been receptive, but we haven't had a consistent plan of a quote unquote attack with the members of Congress in raising this issue, and as I said, making it a front burner issue. So yes, we as faith leaders do have more power than we realize, and we've got to utilize that power to bring about, and Dr. Schulte said it too, the power of spirituality, This is, you know, I reminded of the book, I'm through after this, but Ephesians, and I thought of this as soon as Dr. Scholte said it, in Paul's letter to the church at Ephesus, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 11, where he says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, against rulers of darkness in high heavenly places. This is spiritual warfare, as she said, and I resonate with that 1,000%. This is spiritual warfare. And the only way that it's going to be resolved is that we're going to have to use the power of the Spirit in each of us to make a change. Thank you.
Dr.
So,
Schulte.
Dr. Jenkins, you remember 2 years ago, we met Mr. Beasley, who is director of World Food Program.
Yes.
And we met the Washington Times fact-finding tour group. He just met Mr. President in South Korea, and we met them. And he asked Mr. Moon, so North Korean people is starving. So South Korean government and South Korean people, we must stand up to support these people's life. So beside the political action, like Dr. Schulte mentioned, we must, as religious leaders and religious people, we must participate in these social activities, helping one another, and then support these social and NGO programs to support and more open South Korea and North Korea as well, with small our effort participating this social movement.
Dr. Schulte, how active is Christianity underground in North Korea? Christianity, Pyongyang was seen as the Jerusalem of the East. It was the strongest epicenter of fervent Christian faith before the communist 1948. And, you know, it was oppressed under the Japanese rule, but still Christianity flourished. What's going on with the Christians now? Are they underground? Are they able to function at all? And are the churches in South Korea, what's their support system for all this, the freedom of North Korea?
That's a great question. And that was a great reminder. 1907, Pyongyang was recorded as the greatest outpouring of the Holy Spirit since the Book of Acts.
True.
I believe that the church in North Korea, the underground church in North Korea, is thriving and growing. And I believe there are people even close to Kim Jong-un, close in the regime, high up in the regime, that they're secret believers. But they do have to remain. They have to remain in hiding, because it is punishable. You'll be punished with execution if it's found out you're a Christian, or sent to a political prison camp for a slow death. And that's why North Korea is #1 as the greatest persecutor of Christians. And again, this is a demonic regime. And I should tell Archbishop Stallings, every time we hire somebody to work at Free North Korea Radio, I give them an Armor of God coin that has that quote from Ephesians. You're absolutely right. So I do want to mention one thing. Somebody sent me a question about the radios. Won't you be killed if you have a radio? They had to decriminalize owning a radio, but the defectors have actually also designed a shortwave radio that looks like the government-approved cell phones. There's also very inexpensive radios made in China, like $30, that can get the shortwave signal, that are very popular in North Korea. So that's one of the things that some creative ideas that defectors are coming in to get the radios in. But people in North Korea are so hungry for information. And we do have video and audio of North Korean underground church services of them actually listening to our Free North Korea Radio broadcast. But I think the church is thriving in North Korea under persecution and growing very rapidly, because all those people that were trying to escape, there's a lot of people that went back to share the gospel.
Thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, our time has run out. We have people from all over the world here. Dr. Ramsey from Oxford University has said excellent program, excellent. Bishop Stallings, Dr. Kim, and Dr. Scholte. So he's congratulating all of you from the UK. Dr. Ramsey, thank you for your support for UPF. We have about 19 different countries here We really want to thank our panelists, and especially Dr. Schulte, our special guest today. We will have more forums. A couple of weeks ago, we had a forum where George Washington University Institute on Korea, a professor helped us understand there are 6 million cell phones in North Korea. It's not like they're just locked down in prison. It's an amazing thing, but those cell phones cannot get internet or anything like that. But still, there's an explosion of communication between North Korean people. And eventually that information is what's so important. And those balloons should be flying. We should be able to get free information to the people. And we are not looking for war. We want a peaceful transition. And we believe that is possible. Dr. Beasley with the World Food Program just won the Nobel Peace Prize, and he spoke for our program a couple weeks ago, our International Rally of Hope. It was beautiful because they've delivered hundreds of millions of tons of food to North Korea. That's really, really significant. We also had another program recently where an expert on reforestation came in, and they reforested with hundreds of volunteers from South Korea and from all over the world. And Americans can go if this ban is lifted on Americans traveling to the north. But they had, incredible video on them planting trees all over the mountains because Mother Moon's hometown got flooded because they're cold. They take all the wood. They're trying to survive. And those programs are also, we believe, not only political, diplomatic, religious, but also humanitarian. That's very big, and we can all help with that. And I would like to ask everybody to support Radio Free Korea. This is a tremendous, tremendous development. We'll be sending out to all of you information from today from Dr. Schulte and Dr. Kim and Bishop Stallings, how you can support the program she's doing. So I'd like to turn this back to Vice President Duggan. We're sorry, time's up. We have many questions pouring in, but thank you to our audience and thank you to all God-loving people. We will see peace. We believe that peace is realistic and will occur. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Jenkins, and also Dr. Schulte and Dr. Kihun Kim from Chicago, and our chairman of IAPD, Interreligious Association for Peace and Development. And Dr. Schulte gave us very practical steps that we can really do something and then get more wisdom, how we can help you enhance your program. And we are looking forward to meeting with you, Dr. Schulte, and then guide us more because it's something that we have to learn a lot. So thank you so much for your arranging your schedule to participate in this program. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very
Thank
much. I know, thank you again. So we will see you next month. This IAPD is once a month. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Apogee, Chayu Bakan.
Amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a wonderful program. Thank you.
Oh, yeah,
Every
Dr.
Tuesday, every Tuesday.
Thank you.
2 p.m.
Thank you.
Say something
Thank
to all speakers. And then, so I have the information, Dr. Schulte's group, if they are more interested in. So please contact her. I'm sure she will be very happy to receive emails from you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.